Jeffrey, you got a great article in the new issue of the New Yorker magazine on Senator Ted Cruz, who would like, I assume, to be the Republican presidential nomination. You spent a lot of time with him. Give us your assessment of this guy.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't realize is what an accomplished lawyer he was before he became a senator. He's only 43 years old, but he already had argued 9 cases in the United States Supreme Court, including some very significant ones. And I think what I drew from spending time with Cruz was that, you know, he has the mentality of an appellate lawyer. He's always making an argument. He is not someone who is interested in compromising and making a deal and settling the case. He just wants to make the case to the American people, and that's why, at least in part, you know, his views are not middle of the road. You know, he does not like Rand Paul, who has sort of libertarian views on some issues. He's not like Marco Rubio, who has middle of the road views on immigration. He is running to be the most conservative candidate in the 2016 race, and I think, at least for the nomination, that's probably a pretty good place to be.
And when you say he's very intelligent, you spoke to Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard law professor. He's been a professor at Harvard Law School for almost 50 years or so. He says Ted Cruz is what, one of the smartest he's ever taught?
Absolutely, and Alan Dershowitz does not have Ted Cruz's politics, and that one of the things that, you know, this kid was as a kid, he was a superstar. You know, he grew up in Houston. His father was a Cuban emigre, very politically conservative, and he took classes as a teenager in the Constitution with a very conservative teacher. And, you know, his views have not changed at all since he was a teenager. You know, he comes from a very conservative community. He is someone who is a true believer, who's a 100%er, who's extremely articulate, very popular in Texas, certainly. And I think he certainly has found himself in a place that's very good for the Republican nomination. It's very problematic in a general election.
Let me get a quick thought from you, and I'll put on the screen a line that Jeffrey wrote in his New Yorker article referring to Ted Cruz. The only Republicans he wants to challenge are those who want to cooperate or compromise with Democrats. What's your assessment? Does he realistically have a chance of being the Republican presidential nominee?
Frankly, Wolf, I think it'll be very difficult for him because I think there will be other people who fill that same niche, maybe Ben Carson, maybe Rick Santorum, also very much to the right of the Republican Party, and it'll dilute the vote. He and Rand Paul also compete for a certain part of the vote. I agree with a lot of what Jeff has said. I do wish that Ted Cruz didn't want so much that the niche he's carved out for himself hadn't been to be the skunk of the Republican Party, and that he would spend more time going after Democrats and less time going after his own Republican colleagues.
And very quickly, Donna, would you be happy if Ted Cruz were the Republican nominee?
Oh, yes, he's a show horse. He's not a workhorse. So let him run.
All right. That was very quick.